Volunteer KC, and we just volunteer around Kansas City. It's pretty, straightforward, and we office out of this building. And Miss Pam is the director of River. They own this entire hospital campus, 15 acres, and they operate a housing program with working homeless families. So thank you for letting us use our space.
Well, welcome everybody. As Tiffany mentioned, I'm with River of Refuge. I'm the executive director here, and we house homeless working families on our site. We have 18 individual apartments on that side of our building where families come and work a program on average 4 to 6 months, sometimes 9 months. And we have a great partnership with Volunteer KC. They help us out all the time, and they actually office upstairs. So I am pleased to be able to offer this space today, and thank you all for coming. This is really an important topic, and thanks for Tiffany to be sorting this out and thinking of these kinds of things. So welcome. And the restrooms, if you go out this door to the left, you'll see a restroom sign, and you'll go left, and there's men's and women's, okay?
Thank you, Pam. All right. I appreciate everyone for taking the time out of your busy-ass Saturday to come in and learn something that should be pretty basic and fundamental, right? But we're here because we know that there's some chaos going on in the world, but it doesn't hurt to brush up on what, we all learned in our last year in high school. So, my story for starting VKC, I was homeless in 2016. I overdosed on antidepressants, and I've been arrested several times and in the psychiatric facility and living outside on the streets. So I feel like I understand what it feels like to have your freedom taken away in a couple different areas, and it sucks, and it would be nice to prevent that for us and our loved ones. So without any more hubbub, Stacy Lake is an attorney, and I would love to hear from you, ma'am, and some wonderful things you have to say.
Hi, everyone. Just as a general introduction, my name is Stacy Lake. I'm an attorney. I've been a practicing attorney for 11 years now, which is crazy to think about. That has been 11 years already. And I'm also a candidate that's running for Jackson County Executive this year. And I'm here to try to give you some important advice over your rights when you go to protest or when you're approached by the police. Since this is being filmed, I really need to make the disclosure that this is not a legal opinion. I'm not giving you legal advice. However, the things that I'm telling you now, I hope you're going to be taking notes over, because these are your protected rights that we all have as not only American citizens, but also as non-US citizens. If there's one thing that I want everyone to leave here with, is to remember your Fifth Amendment right, which is the right to remain silent, okay? You do not have to say anything to anyone. When a police officer approaches you, you don't have to say anything. When an ICE officer approaches you, you don't have to say anything. It's your most, to me, it's probably our most cherished right. They can't force you to talk. And if they try to ask you questions, all you have to say is, I am invoking my right to remain silent, and I need an attorney present. When you say those words, they should automatically stop communication with you, and they'll wait for an attorney or for your attorney to be presented. And if you do not have the money to afford an attorney, they will get you an attorney, okay? So always remember that. And I'm going to be repeating that throughout this presentation, okay? So I can really just drill it into you, your right to remain silent. But first, let's go over your protest rights. Now, when it comes to, your right to protest, generally, you do not need a permit to protest when you're responding automatically to breaking news or to march along the streets or in sidewalks, for instance, as long as you're not obstructing traffic or you're not obstructing the sidewalks. Now, when it comes to private property, you generally will need the permission of a private property owner, but you can protest on the sidewalks, okay? That is publicly accessible land. Now, when you're in a public space, you can photograph or film anything. In Missouri, we have the one-person consent rule here, where as long as you're consenting to record, that means that it is permissible. If anybody tells you don't record this, you know, stop recording, you do not have to stop recording, okay? It's within your right. And that's the most important thing with the whole filming is, and this is what we also saw with the whole Alex Preddy situation, is you need to collect evidence when things that you might feel that is uncomfortable or potentially illegal might happen, because that's going to be very important in a future, if a future case is filed. So it's important to take pictures. It's important to record what you can in order to preserve that case. Now, if you are stopped by the police, and I'm going to repeat this multiple times, the first thing you should ask the police officer is if you're being detained or if you're free to go. If the police officer responds, you're free, like you're not being detained, then please just walk away. Just walk away. Don't engage with the police officer, just walk away to your right. But if the police officer responds that you are detained, what do you do next? No. This is a trick question. You ask them, why are they detaining you? Okay? If a police officer is detaining you, it's your legal right to know what grounds they're holding you on. They can't hold you on nothing, okay? They have to believe that you're committing an illegal act of some sort. And if they have no grounds, then you ask again, am I free to go? And if they say no, and they start asking questions, that is when you invoke your right to remain silent, okay? Now, and this also applies to if you're stopped by the FBI, or you're stopped by a military official, or you're stopped by an ICE official as well. Now, these are general laws of what protesters cannot do. Now, protesters, we cannot block passage on sidewalks. We cannot block passage on roadways, of course. We cannot prevent people from leaving a protest or entering into a protest. We cannot block entrances to any building unless we have the building owner's permission. If a police officer gives you an order to disperse, you must obey that order and you must peacefully disperse. Now, when an officer asks you to do a search, okay? So say an officer comes to you and is like, hey, I need to do a search of your person, okay? Generally speaking, if an officer reasonably believes you have a weapon, okay, a weapon on your person, they can pat you down, but they have to have probable cause to believe that, okay? But anything past a pat down, they generally will need consent for if they do not have probable cause. So for instance, if an officer comes up to you and asks you, hey, can I search your purse, right? You have to provide consent for that officer to search your purse. You do not have to give that consent. You do not have to give your purse. You can refuse, and unless that officer has probable cause that you're committing a crime, they cannot force you to show your purse contents. They cannot force you to show your backpack contents. They cannot force you to do a search inside the car. Yes.
Questions we have on the live is, does this apply to ICE agents and law enforcement officers,
Yes.
like regular police?
Yes,
Yes, it does. They have to have probable cause that you're committing a crime, or that whatever device that they want to search links to that crime of some sort. So let's give a general example. DUI, driving while under the influence. A police officer pulls a person over. They believe that they're driving under the influence. They open up the car. The guy's reeking of alcohol. He fails his sobriety test, right? The officer then has probable cause to search their vehicle for alcohol bottles.
In that same vein of like, we're allowed to ask why we're being detained, are
Yes.
you allowed to ask why you were being searched? Like, what crime do you believe you have probable cause of?
Yes, but this is the thing. If an officer asks you to search, right, or can I consent to search, you can ask them, why do you need a search? But you can also just say, hey, I do not want to be searched. You do not have my consent to search me, right? And then if they're like, well, I have to search you because of, I believe you're committing a crime or whatever, that's when they give you the explanation, right? But if they're trying to do if they're trying to force a search on you, they have to tell you what crime they believe that you're committing, okay? Because like most of the police officers that we have nowadays, they have body cam footage. And if they don't have probable cause to believe that you're committing a crime and they do a force search, that evidence can be thrown out if a reasonable person doesn't believe that probable cause exists. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so one of the things that's coming up in the chat is people are asking if ICE has the same authority to disperse a crowd. Do they have the same rights as a traditional police officer, traditional law enforcement officer in terms of those kinds of commands?
So that's a great question. One thing I want to communicate to people is that ICE, they are not local law enforcement officers. They are federal agents, and they are not criminal agents, right? They operate under a civil scope. And so take what I say with a grain of salt because, like I said, I am an attorney, but I don't specialize in immigration law. But ICE, they don't have the authority. I don't believe they have the authority to forcibly tell a crowd to disperse. That comes from the local law enforcement. So the police usually will have that authority to do so. Is there any more questions?
One of the things that came up in the chat as well is the distinction between one-party consent and like being able to film in public, because those are, from my understanding, two different things, right?
Yeah, well, no. So if you have a camera on you, right, and you're filming, you are giving the consent to film, right? And so that falls into one-party consent. When it doesn't fall into one-party consent is, say, if a person puts a recorder underneath a park bench, right, and they're just recording people's conversations, without them knowing, that violates one-person consent because they're not, nobody's there is consenting to be recorded, right? So, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
When you say that they have to show, they have to present you with probable cause, what if the probable cause that they present you with is bogus? They're, like if an ICE agent says, well, I think you might be harboring someone in your home, therefore.
Well, the thing is it's best to not resist arrest or resist a search, because if you resist, then they could hold you liable for another crime, which is impeding an investigation or resisting arrest, right?
So if they give you some sort of probable cause, it's best to
comply. Yes, because at the end of the day, you're building your case for the courts, right? Any other questions? Yes.
For the purposes of warrants, if they were trying to enter your home, if you're standing in the door, they need a warrant, but if they ask you to come out or something and you step out, then they would be able to just arrest you, is that correct?
Why would they arrest you?
If they have some suspicion, I've just had experiences where if they get you to leave the house, then they can arrest you without warrant, versus if you stay in the house, then they have to have a warrant.
Okay.
So not leaving your property, keeping the shut door.
So when it comes to warrants, we have to do a distinctions here. There's the distinction of a warrant to search a property and a warrant to arrest a person. If an ICE agent comes onto your property and you have the door open and they have a warrant to arrest you and your door's open, you're physically there, then yes, they have the warrant to arrest you. They can just grab you right there. But if your door is closed, they don't have the warrant to enter your property unless they have that warrant to, enter into your property. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, yeah, but like, so say they don't have a warrant.
Yeah.
And they're trying to coax you out of the house so that they can arrest you. Is that like a legal thing?
Well, I mean, the property owner can tell them to get off their property. If they don't have a warrant to be there.
Right.
Yes.
But if they get you to leave the place, then they could.
Well, I mean, you're consenting to leave.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So, like,
if you're
my-
out in public, yes.
Yeah, my question is basically like, it's advisable to, if they attempt to coax you from the property, to not do that, to just shut the door and tell them to leave.
Well, I would advise anyone, if they're in a situation where ICE agents are at their property, to stay inside their premises, and if you have a device to speak outside, give the orders from that device.
Yeah,
So that's what I would advise people to do.
One of the things in the chat is, what are your rights if you are in your car, if you're pulled over and ICE is there? Is it the same as, do you still have that Fourth Amendment right to not get out of your vehicle if your vehicle is like closed, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so, we'll get to this too, because there's two different versions on what ICE can do if you're an American citizen and if you're a non-US citizen, right? And so when it comes to the right to search, the right to remain silent, if an ICE officer pulls you over, like I said, they're not local PD, okay? And even if a local police officer pulls you over, they have to have probable cause that you're doing something, right? They can't pull you over for no reason. If they pull you over for no reason, you do not have to speak to the officer, right? Usually, like when people are pulled over by the police, it's usually for like speeding ticket. That's the most common way to interact with the local police on a criminal level. And usually that interaction is the police officer comes over, a person rolls down their window or they don't, but a police officer will tell you, I pulled you over because of speeding. Can I see your ID and your, your insurance, right? And so, yeah. Did I answer that question fully? Or does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Let's just say they break into your house or your car without a warrant. Do you have the right to defend yourself?
If they break into your property, look, I'm a humanist at heart, right? That goes into the Castle Doctrine, the right to defend your property. And so if ICE agents break into your property, I generally would tell people, let them arrest you and have the courts handle that, right? Don't try to defend, don't try to use violent means to defend your property, because at the end of the day, it'll be figured out in the courts. And that would, unless they had a warrant to enter your property, that would be considered an illegal action on their behalf. Yes.
Is that same idea hold true, like in a church or something like that? If they come to a church, can you say you don't have the right to enter here?
The owner of the church can say that, or the person who owns the property or has permission, from the landowner can say that.
So it can be the minister, it can be anyone
Yes.
representing the church?
Yes.
Okay.
If they have authority from the landowner, yes.
When you get a question, could you repeat the question into the microphone?
Oh,
so that
yes.
people on
The question basically was, if ICE enters into a church, do people have the right to tell the ICE agents that they don't have access to the church? And my response to that would be yes, if they have authority from the person who owns the church, or if they're a representative of the person who owns the church, they can tell ICE to leave, that they're not welcome here.
I would like to add to that too. I did another Know Your Rights training with Boots on the Ground, and one of the things that they suggested, if you own a business or you have a church, have doors that are labeled private, because those areas require warrants to go into. And so if you have a door that is labeled as a private area, people can be in there and ICE agents cannot enter those private areas without a warrant.
Is there any other questions? Okay, I will, oh, yes.
Like, let's say I have a footage of like ICE agents doing something illegal.
Yes.
What is the proper channel to submit that footage and who it should go to?
Air. I believe, and I forgot to write down their phone number, but I believe their phone number is here somewhere, but I would contact AIR, which is like they handle a lot of the like the immigration issues. They're a nonprofit that handles a lot of the immigration issues in Kansas City. Any other questions before I continue? Yes, in the back.
Yes, if you're a business owner or a church with a privately marked area, what is the legal right that you hold to invite someone into that area for sanctuary or for basically ceasing access to that person from ICE or agency?
Okay. So the question basically is if you're a business owner and you have a private area, what are your rights to offering a person to come into that private area for sanctuary? This is, in my belief, if you're a private business owner, you're on your own private property, you have your own rights to do whatever, right? Unless they have a warrant to enter and to arrest that person. So you can do whatever you want on your property, right? Because then otherwise it'd be trespass.
I have heard on the inverse of that is like if you're like waving somebody in, like somebody's getting chased down by us, that could be seen as like interfering. With
Yes, that's hot pursuit. Yes. Okay, let's give an example. Okay, so if you see a person running outside, okay, and an ICE agent is trailing them, right, and they go into your business. And they hide in a corner, and you put them in a place, and then you tell the ICE agent, like, sorry, this is a private business. They might be able to still enter your facility because of hot pursuit laws, because they're in hot pursuit of an action. But this is the thing, though, and this is why I'm kind of like, because ICE is technically a civil agency. They're not a criminal agency, and does hot pursuit laws apply to civil agents? Because hot pursuit laws are usually granted under crimes, right? If a police officer believes a crime is happening, right? I would have to do more research on that point, but so that's why I'm like, it's kind of gray, and that's the terrible thing about what ICE is doing in our community is we've never really been here before. And so a lot of their actions are technically, like, we believe they're illegal, but since it hasn't been sent to the courts yet, we really don't have that much direction as to the illegality of their actions, since they're in a gray area. Any other questions before I continue? Oh, yes.
You're good.
Yes.
I guess to add to that example, I guess a current thing that happened that I seen on TikTok was a DoorDash delivery person ended up coming into a person's house because they were getting chased by ICE, but they got sent away from the homeowner because they didn't have a warrant. So I think there was a lot of conversation through that that relates with this as well.
Yes. Yeah, like that's the thing, because like the hot pursuit, and because I would have to research that, because like hot pursuit laws generally will apply to local law enforcement agents, which also applies to FBI agents as well, or any agents that are trying to detain a person who committed a criminal action. On the point of whether or not hot pursuit applies to ICE, I would have to research that.
Another thing was they kind of specified, like what he had said earlier about if you're bringing someone in, then you're committing a crime. But if they happen to just come in, then there's like an area with that.
It's a gray area. Yes.
So if ICE happens to come onto the property of my private business and is questioning someone that works for me, am I allowed to interfere in that so that they're able to go to an employees only area?
Well, You could literally, if they're in your public business space or if they're on the property.
Is that person then able to leave if I, as the business owner, step into the middle of it, or?
Well, you can tell the ICE agent to leave, and if the person who's having that conversation with the ICE agent wants to continue having the conversation, they would have to follow the person, you know, out of your property line. But if they don't want to, they can just stay. Like, you can say, I have permission to give, you know, for you to stay, but the ICE agent has to go. And sorry, that the question basically was, if a business owner sees an ICE agent on their property speaking to another person, does that business owner have a right to tell the officer, that ICE officer, to leave the property? Which is, yes, they do.
Well, we see that ICE's compliance isn't necessarily at the highest
Yes.
level. So say you're in your home and they come to your home and you have, I have children that are from South America.
Yeah.
And they're American citizens, but they come to check. And I'm not gonna let them in. And they say, if you don't let us in, we're going to, and then they say something that they do not have the legal right to do. We're gonna bust in, we're going to blah, 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 blah. Those different things. What is your recourse?
They would need a warrant to enter your property.
But we see a lot of times, I mean, they don't have a warrant for a lot of what they're
Yes.
doing, and they're doing it. Just record, essentially.
Yes, record.
Get your
Because
evidence.
if they do bust in, that's property damage, that's civil liability right there.
If you were to call 911, then would local law enforcement have a
I would
responsibility
100% call 911. Yes, for local law enforcement to
We've been advised by other agencies to not call 911 because our local PD is collaborating with ICE.
I mean, this is the thing. I know, but this is the thing too. Is like, at the end of the day, this is just my belief. The KCPD, they have to comply with the laws of Missouri. Exactly. They have to comply with the laws of Missouri. And so, if an ICE agent was breaking into my house, I'm definitely calling the KCPD for them to come by, for them to make a police report, so that if I have to file a case against them for civil liability, that there's everything is recorded. You have the police report, you have the KCPD officer being like, this is what happened, you know, and then the PD officer is going to talk to the ICE officer and everything's going to be recorded. The thing is we have to be cognizant that we need to be able to collect as much evidence as possible. Because as we have seen with the whole Alex Preddy situation, is people are so easy not to believe our words of what happened. And you don't have to just show them what happened. You have to show them now with different angles of what happened before some people will actually see the truth. Yes.
Not to get in the weeds, but we've been talking a lot about warrants, and my question is, how do you know if a warrant is legally binding and one that's not? Because it's my understanding that ICE is issuing warrants, but they are not legal documents.
Well, the thing is oh, yes. So basically, how do we know if a warrant that an ICE agent gives you is a legally binding warrant and one that's not, okay? So this is what I would suggest. You're at home, you know, get a knock at the door, ICE is there and they have a warrant. They want to search your house, right? Ask them to present you with the warrant. You get your cell phone out. You should take a picture of the warrant that they're presenting you. But generally speaking, when a warrant is issued, you will generally see a case header, right? That will say, you know, like for instance, the Circuit Court of Jackson County, and it would have a case header, and then it would have the language of the warrant and what they can search, and then it will be signed by a judge, right? It would be either signed by a circuit court judge or by an administrative judge, but it has to be signed by a judge usually. Okay, so usually what you need to be looking for is the case header and whether or not it's signed by a judge. If it's not signed, I mean, it's not a legal warrant, and I would say, sorry, you don't have access to my house. And then if they break in and enter, then just record everything that's going on.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Too. I've heard a little bit about there being a difference between judicial warrants and administrative warrants.
Yes.
And I don't know if you talked about that at all.
Yes, I don't feel comfortable talking about that distinction because but I understand what you're saying. But because the thing is like I'm thinking like when it comes to federal and state laws in Missouri on administrative and on the federal administrative warrants and the criminal state warrants, I don't feel comfortable speaking on that because I haven't researched that.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
So the administrative warrants are signed by ICE. They're signed internally. They are internal memos. They are not valid warrants, but they are trying to make it sound like it is a valid warrant. The only valid warrants are the judicial warrants signed by a judge. An administrative warrant, which is the warrant that ICE is using to try and trick people, is signed internally by ICE, and it usually says Department of Homeland Security on it. It's not signed by a judge.
Yes, and the thing is what really tripped me up on that is like you have administrative judges, okay, and administrative judges, can sign documents as well. So that's why I'm saying when you're looking at the document, make sure that it's signed by a judge. Any other? Okay. Yes.
How do I know that it's signed by a judge? It says like Judge X or?
Yes, it will have the judge's name underneath the signature.
Like, I know that maybe I sometimes put them in, but I don't know who my local judge is. So, but it'll say the word judge.
Judge or magistrate.
Or honorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it usually will have a seal too.
Yes. And it will say the court circuit name usually. It'll say like court of whatever city, court of whatever county.
And that's why I again remind people, you take a picture of it, right? So you have that in your records.
Do judges have a bar number, or is that just attorneys?
I mean, any person in the legal profession has a bar number.
So would that bar number then be included on?
No, not the judge doesn't have their number on documents. Yes.
I'm a public school teacher, and I'm thinking about an upcoming trip that we'll have to DC. And I'm just wondering, what are my rights for interfering if agents are trying to interact with a minor? I'm effectively acting as their guardian, but I'm not legally their guardian.
Yeah.
Is it any different than if I was just a normal bystander in terms of aiding them in knowing their rights and communicating with them?
I mean, I'm assuming that you have consent slips signed by the parents that give you authority to watch over their children while you're in DC, correct? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, because it all depends on what the consent slips say, but generally if it's a correct consent slip, which basically gives you representation over their children when they're in DC, then you generally will have, authority. So if for instance, if an ICE agent wants to speak to a minor, right, you can step in as their guardian, their temporary guardian, and basically be like, I'm the child's representative. You have to speak to me first before you speak to this child, essentially.
And that's true, like trying to remove children from premises, saying I am their representation, I am here with them, and I have to go with them.
Yes, but like I said, if you have that signed authority from the parents, because parents, grandparents, they have parental rights over their children, right? So you have to have that authority. Any other questions? Okay, let's continue then. Remember, the Constitution never protects violence or criminal activity, okay? So you do not have rights to commit crimes during protests, and please do not. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is when you need to obtain a permit to protest, okay? So you need to obtain a permit to protest if you're planning to have a march or a parade that does not stay on the sidewalk and is not in response to an event that just happened, okay? When you're having a rally that uses a sound amplifier, you'll need to have a permit. So if somebody's out there with a megaphone, you generally will need a special use permit for that, or special events permit, excuse me. When it's a rally or a protest at certain parks or certain plazas, in the city or in the county, if it's not derived from an event that just happened, you'll need a special events permit. And of course, anytime local laws require it, because there's a bunch of local laws there. So, yeah. Now, encounters with law enforcement. So you're at the protest, and you know a police officer, tries to talk to you. What can you do? First is what? Right to remain silent. Okay, the right to remain silent. You have to have that in the forefront of your mind, because people love to talk, or some people just love to talk, okay? But you don't have to talk. Sometimes you feel, an average person feels like an urge to talk, like I need to explain my side of the situation to make sure that everything is going okay, that I'm not doing anything, that I'm the good guy. But it's like, no, you need to just be quiet. And I'm not gonna say what my criminal law professor told our class. It kind of sounds like STFU, okay? But that's what you need to do, okay? Now, the right to remain silent. You do not have to say anything to a police officer. You do not have to give your ID to the police unless you are detained, okay? If you are detained, then you have to provide your ID. If you're not detained, you do not have to give the police officer anything. You don't have to give them your name. You do not have to give them your ID. Now, if you're stopped for questioning, the first thing that people suggest to do is to stay calm, okay? You do not want to get in your feelings. You do not want to be very emotional. You have to remain calm. Then ask if you're free to leave. So a police officer comes up to you and is like, hey, so what are you guys protesting about, right? I would look at the police officer and then ask what? Am I being detained? Yes. And then the police officer will probably look at you and be like, no, and then leave. You don't even have to ask, am I free to leave? You can then just calmly just walk away, okay? If a police officer then says, yes, you are being detained, what do you guys do next? Yes. Ask, why am I being detained? And then they have to give you the reason why they're detaining you. Yes.
Do you have to identify yourself to ICE agents?
We are going to get there. We are going to get there. But it depends, and that's why I said it depends if you're a United States citizen or a non-US citizen, okay? But we will get there. But yeah, you ask them why you're being detained, and they have to tell you what probable cause, like what reason they're detaining you. If they have to believe that they have to have probable cause that you're committing a crime to be detained, okay? And if they don't have any reason to detain you, what do? Yes, calmly just walk away, okay? You don't have to say anything, just calmly walk away. Now, if a police officer comes up to you and is like, hey, you know, we heard some things are going on. Can I search your backpack? What do you say? No. You do not have to give your consent. The only time a police officer can search your backpack is if they have probable cause to believe that your backpack is somehow linked to some crime that happened, okay? So if a police officer comes up to you and asks you to search your backpack, what do you say? No. And if then a police officer would be like, I have to search your backpack, then what do you say?
You got a warrant. What am I being accused of?
What is your probable cause?
Yes, why do you want to search my backpack? Because remember, the police officers nowadays, they're always mic'd up. They have the body cam footage going. And they have to tell you the reason why they want to search your backpack. And so if they're like, we think you have a gun in there, right? And after they state that, then show them your backpack, okay? Because this is the thing, you do not want to get additional charges like obstruction or resisting, right? but you're building your own case, civilly or criminally in the future. But remember, you have to, like, unless they believe that you're committing a crime, they need your consent to do the search, okay?
Sorry, can I have you pause for just 1 second? Your microphone cut out.
Oh, okay. Now, where was I?
No.
Yes, no. But I'm going to repeat this line to you. Officers cannot search unless they have probable cause that you committed a crime and the officer believes that the item contains evidence that's linked to that crime, okay? So if an officer asks you to search your pockets or search a bag, they have to have consent unless they have probable cause that you committed a crime or there was a crime committed that links to that item, okay?
What if they're clearly fabricating the probable cause?
Everything is recorded, okay? So if they come up to you and they're like, oh, well, we have probable cause that you have a weapon. We believe you have a gun on you. We need to search your backpack, okay? And they search your backpack and like there could be 3 realities that happen. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the question. What if they fabricate the probable cause, okay? So they come up to you and they're like, oh, we believe you have a gun on you. We need to see your backpack. The best thing to do is comply, right? So you show them your backpack and 3 things could happen. Your backpack doesn't have a gun. Your backpack has a gun. Or your backpack has something else in it that is this criminal, okay? Now, say if it's the 3rd option, your backpack has something in it that's criminal, right? You're seized, you're arrested, you're going to court, right? What your attorney will do is then they'll review the body cam footage of that police officer to say, okay, well, why did this police officer believe that he had a gun, right? And if there's nothing there that would suggest that you had a gun, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be thrown out, okay? And so that's why the consent is so important, because if a police officer comes up to you and is like, can I see your bag? And you're like, yes, here's my bag, right? That's a consent. So yes, and yes.
One of the questions was, is it like, what happens if you have a permit to conceal carry? Is that probable cause if you have a permit to conceal carry?
Well, I mean, then you're not breaking the law.
Right, but if a cop is saying, like, can we look in your bag?
Yeah.
Would you just respond with, I have a permit to conceal carry?
Well,
Like,
if they believe you're carrying a weapon on you and you do have a weapon on you, then you have a permit for concealed carry, then you're not technically breaking the law. You know, they can still search your bag for that weapon, but if you have a permit for concealed carry, you're not breaking the law. Yes.
If you, say you have a gun on you and a cop or somebody asks you if you have a gun, you legally have to tell them yes or no. Like, do you have to answer that question?
Usually, so you have the right to remain silent. Right. You know, a police officer, like, you do not have to tell an officer anything, right? But the thing is if they believe, they have probable cause that you're carrying a weapon illegally, they do have the right to do a pat down, to give you a pat down. And if they find the weapon, again, you have the right to remain silent, right? You don't have to say anything. But if you have your permit for concealed carry, you can then show the officer your permit to conceal carry. Any other questions? Okay, let's continue. Now, this is if you are arrested, okay? You're at a protest, something happens, you're now arrested. What do you do? What's the first thing? STFU. Yes, STFU. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to remain silent. Do not resist arrest, even if you believe it's unfair. You wouldn't imagine the amount of cases that I've had where a person didn't do anything wrong, but they still got a resisting arrest charge because when they got arrested, they resisted arrest, and it's like, yeah, I understand you didn't do anything wrong, but you resisted arrest, and that is a crime. So stay calm, do not resist arrest. and stay silent. If they continue to ask you questions, tell them again that you're invoking your right to remain silent and that you wish to have an attorney. At that point, when you invoke your right to an attorney, they have to immediately terminate the conversation, and then they can't talk to you again unless you give them consent to talk to you, or they bring your attorney with you. And like I said before, if you do not have money to hire an attorney, they will present to you an attorney. Okay, so don't worry about money. Okay.
I have a question. Yes. And what time frame are they required to provide you with an attorney after they have taken you into custody?
Yes. So I mean, it typically depends on when you're picked up. Okay. So like, say if you're picked up on a Friday, like a Friday evening, right? Like the court's closed, you know, the attorneys are home, courts are closed for the weekend. And so you could be held in prison through the weekend without a public defender available. But on that Monday morning, you're going to be in front of an attorney. You're going to be in front of a public defender at least.
I have a question. Stacey.
Yes.
Do you have a right to a public defender in civil and criminal court?
Just in criminal court. You do not have a right to a public defender in civil courts, in civil matters. Yes. Yes.
So there's also options like Legal Shield where you can have access to an attorney 24/7. So
Yes.
there's that emergency line that you're able to, in that moment, call.
Yes, but the thing is like you would have to. Yes, you would have to call. But I'm talking about like a physical attorney appearing, into the bureau. Which, in my opinion, like of course, like having an attorney on the phone is good, but the best representation is always when an attorney is physically there. Now, oh yes. You invoke your right to silence. You invoke your right to an attorney. You do not have to give them any explanation or any excuse as to why you're invoking these rights, okay? Don't be like, I'm invoking my right for an attorney because of X, Y, Z. Because what are you doing there, people? You're talking. You're giving consent to have a conversation with these people, right? You just STFU. Just be quiet. Invoke your right to silence and your right to an attorney, and then just wait, okay? Now, next situation. The FBI contacts you. You get a call. FBI calls you. It's a very scary thing. What can you do? FBI calls you. You have the right to be silent, okay? You invoke your right to be silent. FBI wants to interview you. What do you say? Yes. Usually, like, if they ask for an interview, no, unless my attorney's present, right? If you want to give that interview. But otherwise, it's no. You have the right to remain silent. Now, we're getting to ICE. ICE asks you about your immigration status, okay? If you are a U.S. citizen, you do not have to provide them with anything. You have the right to remain silent, and you don't have to provide them with an ID or anything, okay? Of course, they can detain you, take you down to the bureau, but then when you're down at the bureau, they're going to look you up and they're going to find out that you're a U.S. citizen, right? But if an ICE agent just randomly comes up to you, because we know that they're profiling people now, you do not have to tell them anything, okay? Now, if you're a non-U.S. citizen and an ICE asks you for your immigration papers, you must show them. This is not just United States law, but this is also laws in a lot of countries as well. Like, for instance, if you were If you're in China and an officer comes up to you and asks you for your immigration papers, you have to show them your immigration papers. That's why a lot of agencies are advising people to carry their immigration papers on them at all times. But if you're a United States citizen, you have the right to remain silent. And even if you're a non-US citizen, you still have the right to remain silent. But the thing is if you still, as a non-US citizen, they have to present their immigration papers.
Yes. So my sons are adopted from South America. ICE agent approaches them and asks them their immigration status. I'm going to instruct them to go silent, and then they arrest them. Okay.
What is their? Are they U.S. citizens? Yes. Yeah.
And so if they get arrested, and if they are traumatized, injured, any of their belongings are damaged, if anything like that were to happen in that process, when they never should have been arrested in the first place, what is their risk?
Yes, that's civilly, right? You have a case for false imprisonment, illegal arrest, because the thing is they have to have, like ICE agents have to have a reasonable cause as to whether your children are not United States citizens. They can't just target a person and just be like, well, I believe that they were not a U.S. citizen because they were darker than me. They can't say that, okay? They have to have a reason, and it has to be backed up by evidence. And so,
take ICE to court? I mean, how?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, well, and I'm talking about like if a person is arrested by the police, right? And it was an unlawful arrest, and the police really didn't have any probable cause to arrest that person, then they do have civil recourse. But the thing is it goes back into, did the police officer reasonably believe that this person was committing a crime, or had a reason to reasonably detain that person, right? And that standard also applies to ICE agents, even though right now they're litigating the indemnity, as to how much they can protect an ICE agent. But you still have rights under civil law.
And they're not wearing any kind of body cams or anything. So
yeah.
If you say to them, are you detaining me? You're not going to have any of that evidence outside of another person recording.
Yes, but the thing is they still have to have proof themselves, and it has to be documented proof. So of course they can make up whatever they want, but it has to be backed by something, because that's the civil case.
People taking ICE to court?
Like I said, this is a new situation, and so we're in uncharted waters right now. Yes.
Does ICE have the authority to make traffic stops? If an ICE agent pulls you over, are you allowed to leave?
That's being currently litigated right now, because a lot of people do not believe that ICE has the authority to make traffic stops, because usually it's local law enforcement that has the authority to make traffic stops, but they have been making traffic stops. And so then the question turns of, are they making traffic stops on random people, or are they making traffic stops because they believe that the car was owned by this specific person that is an illegal citizen, is an illegal person in America, right? And so that's being currently litigated right now. Yes.
Just piggybacking off that question, let's say you don't have a lot of experience interacting with local law enforcement, and certainly maybe not ICE or Border Patrol, and you do get pulled over or you do get stopped. How are you identifying where these people are, like if they're ICE, like do they have to have that on their body somewhere, or do you ask them, or like how are you?
This is my big issue with ICE, okay? Because like ICE is very, how can I put this as PC as possible?
Please don't.
Look, I think it's very serious for, like there's situations where, and I'm talking about local law enforcement, where they go into a situation plainclothes, right? And plainclothes means they're in civilian clothes, And they don't really have any identifier on them until afterwards they'll show you their badge, right? But that's only in certain situations. And like in law, right, we have criminal law that basically, explains what situations that's appropriate, right? With ICE, we really don't. I think it is a scary thing to be approached by a person that's wearing army wear and they don't have any identifier on them, and you can see they have guns, their faces, covered, and they're asking you to get out the car. It's not even being like, hey, it's like, get out the car. Because personally, I wouldn't want to get out the car. I would be like, I don't know who you are. I'm leaving because I've seen this movie and I do not like the ending of this movie, okay? Because who would? Look, I'm just gonna keep it real. You're driving down the road, right? And you're at a stop sign and some random person knocks on your door and they're like, open up, open up. Are you going to open up the, you can like, no. And so, yeah, I know I'm not answering your question well enough, but like, I understand the hesitation. I think they should have the same requirements that the police officers have, where, they have their name, agency, badge number, like the identifiers right underneath of them. So when you're pulled over by one of them, you know exactly who they are and you know exactly what authority they're under, okay? But yeah, I think, because like honestly, that's my fear too. Is I'm like driving down the road and I see the lights, and I pull over because I see the lights. But then a person comes out and it's a person in plain clothes that has no identifiers on them asking me to get out the car, because, like I said, I look back at the car and I realize it's not a police car. It's just some SUV with lights. I would be afraid to open up my door because you don't know if it's a false police officer. You don't know who they are, right? Well, the thing is, you have the right to ask them to identify. But the thing is, too, you also have the right to remain silent because you don't have to tell them your name. You don't have to give them your ID unless they tell you the reason why you're being detained, right? So like, for instance, they're like, oh, because you're speeding, can I see your ID and insurance? And you're like, oh, okay, here you go, right? But if they don't have a reason, then you don't have to provide that information. Yes?
Do you also have the right to call your local law enforcement and say, there is an unmarked car and an unmarked person who just pulled me over?
Yes.
I'm requesting support while this gets navigated, or I have questions about who is behind me.
Yes.
And so because there are also vigilante people who are pulling people over for things.
Yes,
I think
yes.
it's important to know that you can call for support from your local law enforcement as maybe tenuous as that might be.
Yes, that's actually a great point. Just to repeat, the questioner basically asked if we could call the police to let them know that there is an unmarked vehicle, an unmarked officer that's pulling people over. Yes, I think that you should contact KCPD because what will they do then? They'll make a record of it, right? There's more evidence for people to pull. And also KCPD might send out a patrol car to approach that vehicle. They have body cams on them. That's more evidence that you can use.
And even if the police department is shady and doesn't make a report, there's record of you calling into dispatch.
Yes.
And there's that, right? So you could prove
and I also have to put this disclaimer because when I found this out, I was so angry, and because it's a terrible policy, but it's our current policy under the KCPD. They can delete evidence within 180 days if a crime is not filed within 180 days. They can delete the video footage, they can delete the 911 calls, and I state that because if something happens, you should go down to the KCPD office and request a copy of that footage, because after 180 days pass, they will delete that footage, which you can only imagine why I'm so angry at that, because you have clients who committed a crime the prosecutor, you know, like they commit they allegedly commit the crime, and you hear about this case, you know, like say 7 months after the fact, you go down to the KCPD, be like, hey, I need to see the video, whatever of this footage, and then they're like, sorry, we don't have it anymore. It's crazy, but that's our current policy. I know it's awful. Like it's an awful policy. I made a huge fuss. A lot of people made a huge fuss. It's still the policy. And this is where I'm getting to one of my favorite points about you need to vote for people that represent your interests. Okay? Voting for people that represent your interests. And look, we as Kansas City people, Jackson County people, Missourians, we have to have an honest conversations with ourselves about local control. We are now one of 2 cities that have local control. So like we don't have local control, which means we don't have control over our police department. And the other city is St. Louis, which lost their local control last year, which was crazy because after they regained local control, their crime rates plummeted, right? But the state of Missouri Republicans still took away their local control last year, which is crazy. There's only 2 ways, and I mean, don't quote me on this, but I believe there's only 2 ways to get local control back. The first one is the governor has to agree to relinquish local control. That's how St. Louis got it back in the first place, okay, under Jay Nixon, right? Don't ask me why Kansas City didn't get our local control back under Jay Nixon. I don't know. I have speculation, but I'm not going to speculate, okay? But the thing is the governor has to relinquish control. The other way is, or I guess there's 3 ways. The other way is, of course, the state government passes a bill, you know, to give our local control back. The third way is statewide vote, right? Making local control a constitutional a constitutional requirement in our state constitution, which I really think needs to happen. But in order for that to even happen, we would have to gather signatures to put it on that ballot, and then we would have to convince the majority of Missourians that this is the right way, because we have a lot of people that don't live in our cities that are like, oh, well, the reason why they don't have local control is because they can't handle control. But then when you talk to them, be like, well, what if your city didn't have control over your police department? How would you feel? And they'd be like, well, that's not going to happen because, you know, we have good, we don't have the issues that you guys have, right? But I say that too, we need to reach out to our neighbors, because at the end of the day, I think that the average person truly does believe in local control, that the people should have control over their police department. And as long as we have dialogue over that, that's how we're going to change people's opinions over this. But it is a huge issue right now that we do not have local control. The Board of Police Commissioners controls the Kansas City Police Department, and it was the Board of Police Commissioners that put in the 180-day retention policy. So local control is important. We really need to start talking about that again. But I'm going to give you some more nightmare fuel. Okay, so just, and I'm almost done, but because I need to let you know what's going on in the Missouri state government. Okay, there's 2 bills that I need for, yes, like, yes, it's an Amber Alert.
Amber Alert, people are organizing against the government?
Amber Alert, Stacy Lake is spitting some facts. Okay, so currently multiple bills have been filed in Missouri to increase penalties for protesters and protect people who may cause serious bodily harm or death to protesters. And I'm going to go over two of the bills now. There's House Bill 2174 that was filed by Chad Perkins, who's a state representative from Bowling Green, Missouri, which is a place that's outside of St. Louis. And he basically filed a bill that's being considered right now, which limits criminal or civil liability when a person flees an unlawful or riotous assemblage while in a motor vehicle. In other words, if a motor vehicle runs over a protester, they can use this bill to not be prosecuted or not to have a civil, like wrongful death case filed against him. I'm going to read to you the text from this bill. Under this bill, any person attempting to flee in a motor vehicle from an unlawful or riotous assemblage cannot be held criminally or civilly liable for any death or injury that results to any participating individual, so long as the person reasonably believes any occupant of the motor vehicle is in danger and the person exercises due care at the time of the death or injury.
That's bonkers.
That's absolutely nuts.
Yes, so House Bill 2174, okay?
Does that go both ways? Yeah.
No. This is just for the person, this is the person driving the vehicle, okay? It's not for the protester, yes. Huh? I have no idea. I have no idea. I know, but it could be because usually with Republicans, they try to pass similar bills all around. But these are anti-protesting bills, right? But like I said, this is crazy because this is to give people indemnification for causing death to protesters, okay? The other House bill I want you guys to write down is House Bill 2555. So that's 2 and then 3 5s. And this was presented by Scott Miller of St. Charles, Missouri, that is also a province right outside of St. Louis, okay? And this bill does a lot of things, but it additionally wants organizers of protest activities to be registered as general lobbyists, okay? Yes. So for those who are unaware, if you're a lobbyist, you have to file a lot of paperwork, right? You have to file paperwork detailing your expenses, detailing, what revenue you pick up for certain events. You have to make a lot of disclosures, right? They're trying to say that organizers of protests should have the same responsibilities as lobbyists in making those disclosures, which is crazy. So they want to enact criminal and civil penalties for protest organizers and nonprofits that supports protests for failure to register as lobbyists. And the penalties could be anywhere up to $1,000 per day for failure of compliance, or it could be anywhere to a Class E felony. 2555, okay? Another thing, I'm not done with 2555. The other thing that it wants to do is to make mass protesters a Class A misdemeanor, meaning that if a person is wearing a scarf or a medical mask, they could face up to a year in prison. They also they also want to make protesters liable for false imprisonment if they impede the movement of another person by blocking rights of way on sidewalks, roadways, or any location that a person has a right to occupy. And finally, they have the same language as House Bill 2174 in that bill, which would provide complete legal immunity for drivers who kill or injures a protester with their vehicle. Scott Miller of St. Charles, Missouri, okay? Yes.
So where are these bills currently in like the process of being proposed or?
Oh yeah, so they're basically in the reading stages. Okay, so the person filed them to be considered, and now they're being read, and they're in the committee stage essentially. Yes. But like I said, we need to be aware of this because these are bills that are actually filed that have the potential to be passed. Whether or not they're going to be passed, we don't know, but these have been filed and they could be passed. So just to have that knowledge. But that's why it's so important to not only participate in these protests, but also to participate at the voting ballot box, okay? We need people in there that legitimately care about our rights, that care about the people in our community, and that will represent our best interests. And so I encourage, this is just my plug, please talk to your neighbors, ask them if they're registered, ask them if they voted before. If they're not registered, then at least Google search how to register a person. It's very simple to do. And this August and this November, try to find another person or 3 people or 10 people to go to the ballot box with you. We need to be more active because for people who are unaware, in our last election in 2024, only 52% of Kansas City actually turned out to the voting box. This was the lowest voter turnout in the history of when we started recording voter turnout in Kansas City. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So please educate yourself not only on protesting rights, but also educate yourselves on the leadership in your community. Yes.
With the voting thing, the redistricting thing, it might not. Yeah, it's going to be on the ballot, so it's
a mess.
It's going to be what it's going to be for the 2016. But with that being said, if we can get a whole lot more people out, that might actually inversely impact the Republicans. Because if you can get that when they have gotten them split the districts or whatever, being able to get them. I guess it was making it so that there was more, less Democratic people in the Jackson County region, but it'll allow it to potentially flip it if we were able to actually get enough people out because it'll spread out the Democratic vote.
Yes. So this question is about the Missouri First map, which is the map that Governor Kehoe and his minions cobbled together to split Jackson County into 3 congressional districts when it was originally just Cleaver's district. That whole situation is a mess. It's an utter mess. The lines, and this is my opinion, are racially drawn lines that were drawn on historical red line zones in Jackson County. It's completely disgusting. This is why that whole situation sometimes just keeps me up at night because I don't know how many of you are aware, but we were able to get the amount of signatures submitted to the Secretary of State's office in order to have a vote to overturn the Missouri First map. But it's up to the governor to decide when that vote could happen. So there's a possibility that this vote might happen in August when the primaries occur, which that would cause a huge mess because we're having our primaries on the Missouri First map, but if we vote to overturn the Missouri First map, then what happens? Is the whole thing void? We can't, it's a huge mess. And the thing is, I've been asking so many people about this, our state reps about this, and they don't know. So yeah, it is. And the reason why they redrew these maps is because they based it on the 2024 voter turnout so that each of those districts would give the Republicans a +20 advantage. So that's what we're looking at right now, is losing our districts, okay, of Democratic, of potentially Democratic representation. So, yeah, did I answer your question fully?
It wasn't a question, just kind of a more.
Okay, yeah, just, anybody else have?
Yes, ma'am. Since we have, we know what our rights are when we're asked for our ID. What rights does the agent that's asking us information have to provide their credentials? So in other words, guy stops me, he's wearing all military gear, you know, he's a weekend warrior or whatever, and he doesn't have any identifiers on him, and I say, and he starts asking me questions, what can I require of him in the way of
Yes.
identification, and how do I know if that badge is real?
Yes, and so the question I was asked was basically, what rights do I have to get the identification information of a person that's unidentified, that's an agent? Like I said, we are in gray territory right now. Generally speaking, when it is a police officer or an FBI agent, you have the right to receive their name and their badge number, okay? But as we have seen that's going on in our society right now is ICE agents don't give their name, they don't give their identity, because the thing is they're under civil, they're under the civil veil and not the criminal veil. And so that whole question right now is in a gray zone. I personally believe, yeah, they should give their name, their badge number out. They should be doing a lot of things that they're not doing. But because we're in this gray area, they're just doing what they want to do. And they're trying to get away with it.
Yes.
I have a general question. It's mainly in Kansas, so I don't know if you know, but my friends host events, some public, some are ticketed. As they're the owner of the event, what is their right to say you can't come in, you can come in? Like if it's public open to the public, they don't have to have a ticket versus you paid for a ticket, it's technically not open. Can they kick them out in one or both or none or?
Yeah, so the thing is your friends have, if it's their event, if they have rights of the landowner, the landowner gives them the right to host this event, so they're giving them the permission to take possession of that property for that event at that time, then yes, they can tell people you're not welcome here, you don't have the right to be here. That's within their private property rights. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So there was in the news some kind of information that there's internal memos circulating within ICE that they can't enter people's private property without a warrant. Is there any legal basis to this?
In my opinion, no. In Christine Nome's opinion, I don't know. But in my opinion, no. That is, like I said, we have a lot of case law of officers who illegally enter a property, they illegally, break and enter a property, and then they get sued over that, and it's handled in the civil courts. But like I said, it's, with the ICE, in my opinion, no, they don't have a right to do that. But ICE is under protection of the president, so it is what it is. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
You spoke a lot about Missouri and Kansas City laws.
Yes.
Are there any key differences on the Kansas side?
Oh, man. I am not aware of right now. And the thing is I say that because I brought up the House bills on the Missouri side. I'm just assuming that Kansas is worse. I'm just making that assumption. I haven't researched it yet, but I'm just assuming that Kansas is they probably have their own bills that are kind of like these other House bills that they're trying to pass through. Not to say that they've already passed them through, but they're probably trying to, because crazy things happen in Kansas sometimes, So, but I don't know. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you for hearing my presentation, and If you're interested in me or following my campaign, I do have cards, so you can get them after we're finished. Thank you so much.